From Austin Film Festival, this is On Story, a look inside the creative process from today's leading writers, creators, and filmmakers. I'm your host, Barbara Morgan. This week on Story, writer-director Rian Johnson joins us to talk about the third installment of the Knives Out mystery series, Wake Up Dead Man.
I know the movies, I'll put it this way, the movies that I see that affect me, that live on in my life beyond the movies, are the ones that get me asking questions of myself. I think that's kind of the most art can do.
On Story from Austin Film Festival. We'll be back in a moment. Hey, podcast listeners. I'm your host, Barbara Morgan, and you're listening to Austin Film Festival's On Story podcast. This week on Story, we're talking to Rian Johnson about his process writing and directing Wake Up Dead Man, a Knives Out mystery. This third installment of the Knives Out series follows an ambitious young Catholic priest and former boxer named Jud Duplencity. Jud teams up with Detective Benoit Blanc after the divisive Monsignor of his small rural parish is murdered mid-sermon. Outside of the Knives Out series, Johnson has 2 decades of experience writing and directing in the mystery and sci-fi genres. Johnson made his directorial debut in 2005 with Brick, a neo-noir mystery set in a suburban high school. In 2012, he dove into the sci-fi genre with his time travel action epic, Looper. Next, he served as the writer-director for Star Wars The Last Jedi, the second installment of the Star Wars sequel trilogy. In addition to his work on film, Johnson has also directed episodes of Breaking Bad and created the Case of the Week crime comedy series, Poker Face. Johnson sat down with AFF moderator Casey Barron for a post-screening Q&A for his newest feature, Wake Up Dead Man, a Knives Out mystery. But before we dive into the world of Knives Out, we recommend you follow On Story wherever you get your podcasts. Developing your skills as a screenwriter doesn't have to be as difficult as solving an impossible crime. And with a wide range of experience writing, producing, and directing across film and television, our guests are here to help you crack the case. Wake Up Dead Man, a Knives Out mystery clips, courtesy of Netflix US, LLC.
I'm sure for a lot of people, the end leaves a lot to think about, a lot to really sort of pine over. Father Jud decides to leave Eve's apple in the chest of Jesus. Why make him make that choice after we see the conflict he has morally along the way to get to that point?
In writing these things, it's always, actually this is a good way to talk about, because we're here at a writers' festival. In terms of writing murder mysteries specifically, I think the thing you bring up, and for me, beyond kind of why did he do it or what does it mean, because I think that's something audiences can kind of, you can kind of unpack for yourself. But for me, the reason it ends with that is when you're writing a murder mystery, the temptation that you always have to resist is the temptation of leaning on the mystery and making the mistake of thinking that clue gathering and the solution is going to keep an audience entertained. And the reality is, when you're writing, you have to start with the same thing you start with in any other script, which is, who's your protagonist? What do they want? Why can't they get it? And then how are you going to draw a cold, bold line from that opening question to the answer at the end. So, and Father Jud, in this one, he really does have the equivalent of a Disney movie I Want song with that little opening monologue he gives where he says, I just want to show broken people like me the love and forgiveness of Christ.
Hard to know where to start. I guess to tell the story of the Good Friday murder through my eyes, I gotta start here. 9 months ago, when this deacon said something way out of line, and I did this.
So, you're a fighter then?
No, Father, absolutely not.
Well, we have a deacon who would say otherwise if his jaw wasn't broken.
In my previous life, yes, I was a boxer. I lived on the streets. I did some other things.
We need fighters today, but to fight the world, not ourselves. A priest is a shepherd. The world is a wolf.
No. I don't believe that, Father, respectfully. You start fighting wolves, and before you know it, everyone you don't understand is a wolf. And I still got that fighting instinct, and I gave into it today, but Christ came to heal the world, not fight it. I believe that. It's this, not this, you know? Just want to be a good priest. Show broken people like me the forgiveness and love of Christ. The world needs that so bad. You give me one more shot, and I promise I'll do that.
And then to finish it with him being able to do that for the quote-unquote guilty person, the most guilty person in the murder mystery, the person who did it, Martha, at the end. That for me is kind of the fact that those two poles connect. I hope that creates the kind of satisfying pull-through that you go for with any movie, I guess, beyond the notion of like the solution of whodunit.
So I'm also fascinated by the idea that we begin the film and the first act is heavily just Father Jud. We don't see Benoit Blanc for quite some time. How did that structural idea come about, and what sort of excited you about the prospect of that with this being the third installment?
Yeah, I mean, this is almost much more of a traditional structure for a murder mystery. This is actually, I've kind of have done backflips with the first two to avoid this structure, but it is kind of a more traditional thing where you, in the first act, you meet all the suspects, you get a very good sense of who's probably going to get murdered, then they get murdered, and then the detective shows up, and then that's usually how the first act of any Agatha Christie novel plays. I thought it would be really interesting, first of all, to do that, go back to that traditional structure. I thought because we've established Blanc in the first two, we'll wait for him a little bit in this one, but also, more importantly, thematically with this one, and in terms of Father Jud's journey, it was in many ways more complex and important, not more important, but I felt like the movie would really benefit from letting him have the stage for the first act to really get inside his head and understand the conflict that he has with Wicks, but also what he's up against in terms of faith, and kind of lay all the groundwork before Blanc comes into things. So, and we do have that little thing at the beginning just to reassure audiences. Daniel Craig will be in this movie at some point, I promise. It's never a bad idea, yeah.
Never a bad idea. I've seen you speak about growing up within Christianity, and obviously that is a bedrock within this film. Can you just talk about how that sort of laid more of the foundation for you and some of the themes that you were hoping to explore with that lived experience?
Yeah, that's kind of where all this came from. I mean, I grew up very, very Christian from when I was a kid up through my mid-20s. I wasn't Catholic, I was Protestant. I was what we would call evangelical, I guess. I was a youth group kid, but it wasn't just that I spent a lot of time at church. I was very personally Christian, and my relationship with Christ was what I framed the entire world through. It was a very personal, important thing for me. And I'm not anymore. I'm not a believer anymore, but I have a lot of very deep and very, very complicated feelings about it. In both ways, there are things I treasure about it, and there are things that I don't. So I don't know. So this movie for me was part of the challenge of it was just Glass Onion it was exactly what we wanted to make, and I had so much fun making it. I did feel like with this next one I wanted to ground it, and that for me meant making it personal, and that's kind of the most personal thing I felt I could dive into. So yeah, and what could go wrong? Like, talking about religion in 2025 in America, it seemed like a clear, easy path. Yeah.
Touche. There's a very specific turn that obviously happens in the film once Monsignor Wicks, quote unquote, resurrects. And I remember being in the screening room thinking, what the okay, we're going there. What was it like for you to play with that, to craft that on the page, and also really build to that moment in the edit?
Yeah, that was kind of baked in the bones of the thing, and that was kind of, I don't know, I knew I wanted to get it there. And so the author that we name check quite a bit in this movie, John Dixon Carr, was another big launching point for this movie. And Carr wrote at the same time as Agatha Christie. He was a contemporary of Christie's. He was actually American, but he spent most of his time over in Britain. He is obviously not as well known as Christie, but he should be. He's a master of the form. He's a great writer. His detective, Gideon Fell, that Blanc mentions, is actually like maybe my favorite detective in all of fiction. He's just a fantastic character. Big, massive dude who walks with 2 canes and is constantly swigging beer and just like wears a huge hat. He's hilarious. So Carr writes in kind of a Gothic, he toys with Gothic horror in a lot of his books, and very kind of creepy, and he always brings it just up to the point of the supernatural. And so if you're doing an impossible crime and you're making it religious, you gotta bring someone up from the dead. I mean, it made sense, kind of. So and so that was always kind of like a flagpole that I had said I knew at some point in the movie we had to get to that, and that's a big part of the reason I was excited to kind of write the whole thing was, can we do that and then pull it off, you know?
As far as the Gothic tone, the score, the overall soundtrack does a lot of that work. And I know you've spoken about working with your cousin, actually, to compose a lot of this. Where do y'all find that balance? Were there specific references that you were pulling to? Because I think it is so evocative and so sort of propulsive for the audience.
Thanks, man. Yeah, Nathan Johnson, who's my cousin, I mean, we've been making movies together since we were 10 years old, and he's scored every single one of my movies, like Thomas said, except for Star Wars, and he's incredibly talented, and he's also, the nice thing about having Nathan do the score is he'll be there from the very beginning of the process. He's on set, and he's soaking up the vibe on set, and we're talking about the music even while we're shooting, and he's throwing ideas at me. And so for this one, it was just a lot of kind of interplay in terms of tossing stuff back and forth and figuring out, okay, how far can we push this? And yeah, I'm so proud of his work in this. I think he did good.
Now, moving to your principal cast, primarily the flock. I may be reading into this too much, but for me, I saw a lot of resonance with the idea of the 7 deadly sins in Monsignor Wick's primary flock. Made a lot of fun room for sort of dramatic entanglements and things of that nature. Were those some elements that you were thinking of in real time, or was that sort of organically just building as you were crafting the world?
Is Andrew Kevin Walker here? Is he going to sue me for the seven deadly sins to call out? That's interesting. I mean, no, I wasn't specifically thinking of that, but it's very true that, I think that, and in this case, it applies specifically to the topic of religion. But for me, when I'm coming up with the suspects in any of these movies, in order to make sure that just for myself internally, they all have a different voice, for me, what that starts with is whatever the central premise of the thing is, like in this case, religion. Every single one of the suspects is, for me, a distinct slice of my own experience with religion, and with faith, and also with kind of religion. So for me, that helps me, because it's great, because first of all, that means I know where each of them are coming from beyond just, oh, this one plays cello, this one's an author. Each one of them has a distinct way into the subject. And also it means that when you're writing, you're starting from a place of empathy. you're starting from a place, and even with the most despicable characters in this, there's something I fundamentally recognize in myself and empathize with. And I think anyone out there who's a writer, it's similar to acting, actually. When you ask an actor who's playing a bad guy, they're like, they're not a bad guy. I have to find what I connect with in them. And so, especially with the suspects, that's always how I start. Yeah.
A phenomenal cast, truly, from top to bottom. Yeah, round of applause for the cast. Just what was it like to just be on set and play with that level of talent day in and day out?
It makes my job really easy. It's true. It's so much fun. It's and I mean every single person in this cast is, and in all the movies, they're all people who would be, in any other movie, would be number one on the call sheet and would be leading the lead of the film. And every one of them, I think that's why we always have such a good experience. Every one of them is showing up and saying yes to this because they want to be part of an ensemble, like a real ensemble. And that means they're showing up to play, and that means they're showing up to have a good time with their fellow actors. And that's why we've never had any ego anything on these sets. It's always been a love fest, because I think it starts with that. It's kind of a self-selecting process. And so they're all just like, and we try and get a big group scene with all of them near the beginning of the schedule so that everyone can feel each other's vibe and they all end up just like not going back to their trailers and just hanging out kind of in the green room all together and playing backgammon together. And yeah, it's a good vibe, but I think it comes down to that. I think it comes down to just lovely actors who love their fellow actors and wanna play.
The church itself is a really fascinating character in this. Particularly, I'm thinking of the cross silhouette shots that you have both for the introduction of Monsignor Wicks and for Benoit Blanc. What were you thinking when you created that duality, and what were you trying to sort of tap into or nod towards for the audience there?
Yeah, so I mean, and Rick Heinrich, who's our production designer, who also did The Last Jedi and also did Glass Onion, is an amazingly talented dude. He came up with Tim Burton, working with him, and he's very good at doing big scale things that communicate very intimate ideas. And the inside of the church, it was really, we're doing everything we can to embody Wicks, and everything from the angels in the rafters all being warriors with swords to the kind of very aggressive kind of Moby Dick ambo prow that he gets up on the pulpit, to the stark bareness of the I'm not Catholic, this is coming through, of the main stage area. Somebody, well, the altar, yeah, the sacristy? Oh, yeah, anyway. Sacristy. Oh, sacristy. Okay. Good Catholic down here. Thank God. Good. Yeah. Okay. Bless you. And the big move is the missing cross. The notion that there's something missing from this church. Can you spot it? We like to be very subtle with our imagery, and yeah, it was kind of like a big bold move, but then once we committed to it, it's like, yeah, we're just gonna put it up there. And then the notion of Jud restoring it at the end. It's not subtle, but it's what I feel. It works, yeah.
One of my favorite scenes in the film is actually quite understated, where Jud and Benoit Blanc call Louise and try to figure out what's happening with this machinery, what was the order, and Louise asks him for a prayer for her mom. And it's just so elegant. It showcases so much of the importance of faith, whether you believe in it or not.
We need to find out who placed that order.
No, look, I don't think I can do that, but you know what I could do?
It's very important.
Excuse me, Father. What I can do, as I was saying, is I can get that information for you, and then I will
That's
give
it.
you
That's great. And if you could call James now, I would appreciate it so much.
Right.
Thank you, Louise.
She can call you
Okay,
back.
I will. Hey, Father, could I ask you something?
Yeah, wait, if you can make it quick, this is a priority for us right now.
She could call you back.
Father Joe, could you?
Louise?
Oh, God.
Louise?
Will you pray for me?
Yeah, of course. Can I ask what for?
It's, my mother.
What was it like just putting that together and tapping into that sort of spirituality?
Yeah, and that's the great Bridget Everett, who, on the other side of the phone, fantastic actor. Her television show is just absolutely mind-blowingly good. So yeah, I mean, that was something that was one of the rare things. I outlined these movies to death. That was something that wasn't in the outline. That was something when I was just writing. I forget how the scene originally came to a big turn, but it was something different. And I just kind of was writing and just kind of realized, like, oh, wait a minute, it kind of turned on its own into what it became. It came from also, though, because I'm not Catholic, I have an uncle I'm very close to who lives in Denver who is very Catholic. And I kind of nervously was like, well, I'm writing this movie that's kind of set in a Catholic church. And he was very gracious. I flew out to Denver, and he had a dinner at his house with his priest, who's Father Scott, who's a young priest in Denver. He was a technical consultant on the movie, and he invited like 6 other young priests. So I had a dinner with like a group of like 7 young priests in Denver. This sounds like the setup for a joke. It's not. And we all just got very drunk, and it turned into a big ask me anything thing. And that scene kind of came out of that, because one of the very interesting things is we weren't talking about faith or theology, we were talking about what their day-to-day lives are like, which was fascinating. And one of the things is just the thing you don't think about. They wear the collar kind of everywhere they go. So they go to get groceries, they're wearing the collar, and that means they're on stage and they're there to serve all. So he's like, yeah, I'll be picking out artichokes in the grocery, and someone will come up to me and just start sobbing and ask me to pray for them. Or someone will come up and get in my face and start yelling at me. And so it's pretty intense, and just the notion that that can happen at any moment and that you're always on call, that scene kind of grew out of that for me too, yeah.
Towards the end, as Martha is confessing, she's in Father Jud's hands, and he essentially tells her, Martha, grace, you're safe now. Let the hate go, let it go. You have a lot to say in this film about grace, and it's not lost on me, especially in our current socio-political times, how important that is. So I just want to give you a moment to tell us, why is that theme, why was that so important for you to embed here in something that has all these Gothic trappings, all those elements, etc.?
It really does just come, I won't say too much about this, but it really does just come down to, at its heart, my experience with faith. The thing that I treasure about it and bring from it are the things that really draw Christians to be truly Christ-like. And a big part of that is forgiveness and grace, even when the person, especially when the person doesn't deserve it from your point of view, or that's the most Christ-like time to give it. And so the notion of Father Jud bringing her there, and also bringing it up against kind of the thorny knot of misogyny that Martha has kind of internalized, it felt like a good place to kind of land it, but yeah.
What kind of impact do you want this film to have on the world?
I feel like I don't know if, in terms of art and what it can actually, whether it can, in terms of impact, I think the most that you can do is personally have some effect on people and have them walk away. And I know the movies, I'll put it this way, the movies that I see that affect me, that live on in my life beyond the movies, are the ones that get me asking questions of myself. I think that's kind of the most art can do, instead of teaching lessons or something, that doesn't work, I don't think. So I don't know, but and also, honestly, the base thing that all these movies do, which is to entertain a crowd. I think that is ultimately the highest calling that art can have, is to make us all sit in a room like this together and share an experience and feel an emotional connection through that, and laugh and yell and have a good time, and then come out of the movie and talk to each other. To me, that's sometimes debased as just entertainment. For me, that's kind of the pinnacle of what something can do. So I'll be happy with that.
On Story is brought to you in part by the Alice Kleberg Reynolds Foundation, a Texas family providing innovative funding since 1979. On Story is also brought to you by Bogle Family Vineyards, 6th-generation farmers and 3rd-generation winemakers based in Clarksburg, California. Makers of sustainably grown wines that are a reflection of their family values since 1968. The project is supported in part by the Texas Commission on the Arts. This show is produced by myself, Barbara Morgan, Elizabeth Mims, and Emily Locke. Our associate producer is Freya Neely, and our editor is Rishi Bajekal. Music is by Brian Ramos. Copywriting by Mazzy Smallwood. Production assistance comes from Dennis Moniger, Travis Kennedy Sound, Phil Mazzetti, and KUT 90.5 in Austin. Go to austinfilmfestival.com to learn more about Austin Film Festival and Conference each October. Until next time, I'm Barbara Morgan, and this has been Austin Film Festival's On Story.